Hi, Ali. Yes, excellent. Well, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be with you on this webinar here. And I'm sharing with you a topic I'm quite passionate about, and it's about the big picture, how to capture value going forward, given that we are all moving into a service economy. And so I have really two topics here. First, the micro picture. How can you use service in an individual company to differentiate yourself? And the second is the macro picture. Given that we are moving into more and more service-heavy economies overall, what are the implications for capturing value? So let me kick off here with a question. Okay, now my screen doesn't move.
Professor, Ali, just click on the presentation screen at your end and then move it forward.
Yeah, I am. Okay, it doesn't seem to work. Ah, no. Okay. Good. Sorry about this. So one question I always ask here in my classes right at the beginning is, I cite a study that was done in Germany with leading machine tool companies. And they asked these people, where do you see the opportunities for effective long-term differentiation? Yeah, given they are engineers in love with technology, precision, tolerance level, functionality of their machines, right? So they're engineers by training and outlook. So I mean, this is a question I start in almost all of my clients where I go in. Where do you see in your own organization your effective the opportunities for effective long-term differentiation? That's really the key question senior management has to ask themselves and their teams and their customers, right? So I always ask, can you translate this thing, effective long-term differentiation, into something very simple? So you can go out onto a street market, ask a vendor, and tell them what is effective long-term differentiation. That's quite a mouthful. And executives often come back and say, oh, that is sustainable competitive advantage, right? Which is even more complex. I mean, if you look at the very basics, what does differentiation mean? It's you're different, right? But different alone doesn't really do anything for you, right? You're louder, you're faster, you're taller, you're smaller. That doesn't mean anything. So it's really about effective differentiation. And effective means basically you're better, right? You have to be better in the eyes of your customers. And then you can ask, what's better? Is it first class in your airline, or is this a low-cost carrier, right? And then sort of we get to the principle of better actually is subjective. Beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. So it's really for your target segments, what do they value? Is it luxury or is it low cost? So it's subjective. So you're better in the eyes of your customers. And now where does long-term come in? So you're better. Why wouldn't you be better long-term? And so the key answer to this is, look, if you have a brilliant idea your customers love about you, what's competition going to do? Right? They're going to copy you. So in other words, you have to find things your customers love about you and competition cannot copy. So that's the holy grail really in strategy, right? So what is it? Customers love, competition cannot copy. And you can see in many surveys and studies and projects, if you look, price and cost is somewhere at the bottom. So why is price and cost usually, or in general, a poor differentiator? And the question is, well, how fast can competition cut price if you cut price, right? So it's overnight, so it's very fast. And then you can ask, I mean, unless you're in a true commodity type industry, you sell a commodity type product, if you do a 5% price cut, I mean, your customers almost don't care. If they don't like you at 100, they also don't like you at 95, right? But on the other hand, if your return on sales is 10% and you cut price by 5%, it means if nothing else changes, it means your profits go down by half. So in a way, this price cut neither created a lot of value for your customers, And on the other hand, it really sort of cut your power, your future to invest into your business. So in my MBA class, anyone who says cut price, I usually say, well, go home, right? No need to do an MBA to cut price. It's usually not a solution for most markets. And then in my class, we have a long discussion. So where else can you hunt for differentiation? And of course, students usually say many different things here. But what I've seen in study after study after study is that services or service is somewhere at the top. And just imagine these hardcore engineers who love their machines, and you ask them, and how are you going to sell your machines in the future? It's something as soft and as intangible as service. Of course, there are many other things like distribution, branding, price performance, technology, innovation, quality, and so on. Here, this list is not cast in stone. This was a response from a German industry, engineering industry. If you do the same study in America, I can promise you that branding may be number 1 or number 2. But I've seen in many studies that usually service and brand are right there at the top. Now, you can ask, so what this means is that services, customers love services, and services are hard to copy. That's what that means, right? So you can ask, I mean, why are services difficult to copy? And there are many reasons, of course, but I mean, one, to me, is services are people delivered. So it's all about your people and the culture. To copy a culture takes a long time. Then services are a web of processes usually, right? Every aircraft that takes off has 100 different processes that go into, and how do you do better than competition? I mean, you're not going to be better on any one process by 100%. The leading companies, they try to be a little bit better in every single process, and the outcome is a tangibly better customer experience. So it's very hard to copy a web of processes. And the last one, which to me is very important, is many times if you have liquidity or volume or critical mass, it allows you to do things on the service frontier that's very hard to copy. I mean, for example, I work for a very large Chinese company. They have the largest market share in construction equipment in China. Their competitors are American and Japanese, large Japanese and American companies. And they say, yeah, I mean, our machines, I mean, the Chinese company said, our machines break down more often, but God help you if the Japanese or the American machine breaks down. And why? Because the Japanese and American companies have a very low installed base. Spare parts are far away, engineers are far away. This machine is going to be down for a long time. But for the Chinese company, they have engineers in every city, they have parts in every city, the repairs are fast. So their value proposition is really, we'll get you up and running faster. And anyway, over time, our machine is improving. So you can see volume here builds volume. And the same whether you do courier services, you have more volume, you have more frequent flights, you have more destinations, you're faster. Volume builds volume. If you are anywhere let's say, whether you're Facebook or WeChat or any of these services, or Uber or Didi, right? If you have a lot of drivers and a lot of customers on your network, the network itself, the size adds value. So many reasons why service allows you to build a competitive advantage here. And one of my favorite examples is Rolls-Royce here, power by the hour. Today, Rolls-Royce, 80% of its machines, of these engines, are operated on their customers' aircraft and sold power by the hour, right? So it means machines are monitored real time, and if lightning hits an engine or there's any other problem with an engine that's running, immediately a stream of data gets sent to Derby in the UK, screens flash red, and engineers immediately do the remote diagnostic of the machine. So even before the aircraft touches down again, engineers can say, well, actually this lightning strike didn't do any damage of the machine, nobody has to look at it. Or they know beforehand what is spoiled, and the right engineer with the right parts wait on the tarmac, and there's no delay. even if an engine has to be taken out of service, now they know it 8 hours in advance. They can fly a replacement aircraft in, and they don't have to then put up passengers overnight after they establish after touchdown that there's a problem, right? So you can see the service, the value proposition is very powerful for airlines. And for Rolls-Royce, it means that currently $1 engine sales has another $7 attached to it in terms of repair and maintenance over the lifetime of an engine. And when you sell engines, customers often switch to low-cost competitors to do repair and maintenance, and Rolls-Royce doesn't get this revenue. Now, with operating the engine, there's a lifetime revenue with Rolls-Royce. And the other thing is to be able to deliver this service. It's not good enough if you have low-cost competitors who are located either in China or in Mexico or in Russia to compete. If you service, let's say, Emirates, you have to be wherever Emirates flies. You have to have engineers and parts there. If you service United, you have to be wherever United is. If you service Air France, you have to be wherever Air France flies to. So it means the network you have is a really strong competitive advantage that cuts out all local competitors. So it really gives pricing power back to Rolls-Royce. So what you see is that in the past, we may have sold a core product with value-added services, but if you look at it here now, very often the value-added services become a core part of your solution, and that becomes a lot more difficult to copy than just the hardware. Now, this was the micro story. I take one company and use service as a differentiator. So what about the economy as a whole, the big picture? And you can see here the service sector. I put Asia here, but as any region in the world, the service sector is really increasing throughout. And I put America, US here at the extreme right. Why? To me, it is still the most competitive economy in the world. And I show you here 150 years of economic history in the US. And you see 150 years ago, 2 out of 3 people worked in agriculture. And today, it's very few people. Manufacturing peaked, as you can see, in 1945. You can all guess why. That was the end of World War II and the end of the war machinery. So a lot of manufacturing then stopped. And the manufacturing sector has been declining since. And you can see services have gone up all the while. So you may ask, is this trend going to continue? Or is this going to stop at some point? And what I can tell you is from all we know, this trend is going to continue. Manufacturing is going down. And this is not just in America. The world as a whole has about 67, 69% GDP in services. And even China has now far above 50% in the service sector. So it's growing rapidly everywhere. Now you may say, well, but we still have to eat food. We want to drive cars, right? But think about it. This chart is misleading. It shows as if agriculture, as if America doesn't do agriculture anymore, but that is simply not true. What is true is that America has never produced more food than today. America produces more food than Americans can eat or should eat, right? And at the same time, the same is true for manufacturing. America has never manufactured more than today, but what they do is this manufacturing and agricultural output is done with less and less labor and less input because the economy is becoming more and more productive, right? So innovation, automation, and so on. Yeah, so this trend is everywhere in the world. And you can ask, what about countries like China, right? Will China take 60 years from where it is now to go to where the US is today? And I can tell you for sure, no. I mean, I take my students to China for 2 weeks in November, my UCLA NUS executive MBA class, and we visit large steel manufacturing companies, steel mills, so multi-billion-dollar investment. They run 3 shifts of 8 hours a day. They never stop, 800-meter-long steel mill. And have a guess how many workers? So in a regular shift, There are only 4 workers on this line because it's fully automated. We go to one of the large American companies' bottling plants in Shanghai. 4 bottling lines service the whole of Shanghai, 26 million people with soft drinks, right? And how many workers? There's only 10 people in this line. And this only when they switch from one drink to another drink, they have to do a bit of work, right? So it's incredible. Of course, they still have the sweatshops in China, but also really cutting-edge, world-class installations that are more modern than what you see in the US or Europe. Yeah, I don't know whether any one of you can remember or can recognize what this photo shows here and where it is. But this is Pudong in Shanghai. And then you can ask, hey, when was this photo taken? And it's not such a long time ago. It was 1990. And let me show you the same photo 23 years later, 2013. And this is the same picture. So you see the clock tower here in the upper photo, just on the left, and you look down, the same clock tower, still the same, but you look behind the Pudong, is unbelievable. And the building under construction there is finished now, so it's a few years later. I had a group of students from Russia in Singapore. I showed them this photo. They all said, "Oh, this must be photoshopped." I said, "No, the Chinese are so fast," you know. So, I mean, just to show you, the development is rapid. But what's interesting is that actually most service sectors don't grow faster than GDP. It's really only 3 sectors that outgrow GDP, so that gain share in employment and gain share in GDP. And the biggest are really globally. The first one is healthcare. So whether you're poor or whether you're rich, we all spend on healthcare, right? Poor people, the first dollars they earn, they get for health, go to healthcare for their parents, for their children, for their spouses, for their siblings. And in a rich country, people live longer and longer and need more and more life-prolonging medical help. And the other is, of course, there's all these elective surgery that's happening. So if you don't see a Western friend for half a year on posting anything on Facebook, don't ask them where they have been. Just when they show new photos again, just say, "Wow, you look good," right? So healthcare is growing everywhere. What's also growing everywhere is education. In poor countries, education is the only route out of poverty. And in rich countries, we talk about lifelong education and learning. And the last one that's also growing everywhere is really tourism, leisure, F&B. So we all want to experience more. We go into the experience economy. So what you will see is, so these are the sectors that globally gain share. All the others are shrinking, whether it's financial service, telco, transportation, right? They're all shrinking in share. Now, you may ask, I mean, why then is the service sector growing so fast? Yes. And the secret here is it has nothing to do with B2C services. They actually, we did a study on the US, B2C services did not gain any share of GDP. The entire growth of the service sector was really in B2B. Why is this so? I mean, imagine you have an economy with manufacturing at the center. So if I take a large car manufacturing company, and in the old days, they used to run their own canteen. So they employ kitchen staff, servicing staff. And then you can ask, where in the national statistics of this country are these workers captured? And the statistics office never asks you, what do you do? They ask you just, who is your employer? Oh, it's a car manufacturer. Therefore, you are in the manufacturing sector. Now, you may ask, how good is a car manufacturer at cutting vegetables and buying vegetables and managing chefs and so on? You can imagine probably pretty poor. So what do? Is they outsource. And then it's a large catering company that runs hundreds, maybe thousands of such facilities across the world. And what happens is that if before maybe 100 people worked in this canteen, they run the same canteen with 50 workers. So why are they so more productive, much more productive? That's the reason why they They do R&D. They think 365 days a year, how can I cut vegetable, buy vegetable, store vegetable, cook vegetable better and faster and cheaper. They have dedicated software that is designed to work in this environment. They have machinery they develop. They have purchasing power because they buy in bulk for all of their facilities together, whether it is machines, whether it is software, whether it is point of sale systems, whether it is vegetables and meat and other things. Plus they have all the expertise in running kitchens and managing kitchen staff and service staff. So you can see that what happens is we do the same work as before with half the workers and much lower operating cost. So is that good for the car manufacturer? Obviously, right? There's 50 cents less vegetable in every car now. Is that good for an economy? Yes, of course, because the economy has become more productive, right? The economy just has to be flexible enough that the 50 workers we don't need anymore in the canteen, that they get new employment. Now, what's happening here is that I have a value chain and I start outsourcing customer contact. I outsource my canteen, IT, and supply chain, and facilities management, and. So the question is, of course, so if I outsource everything, what is my core competency, right? Because everything else you should outsource, right? That's what sort of what we learn. And unless you differentiate on a particular activity, you're not going to put R&D in it. Are not going to put manufacturing focus in it. So what's left? I mean, if you look at the car company, if the car company is, oh, you know, my core competency is still engine, then be careful, right? Combustion engines are, you know, questionable at the moment. Are they going to be around in 20, 30 years? And electrical engines, I mean, or motors, they're not difficult. So forget about your core competency there. So you really have to ask yourself, let's say if you're someone like BMW, what do you own to extract value in the future? And currently they will talk about the engines. They will talk about design of the car. So the exterior, they're great at designing, but I mean, so are others, they're catching up. Then they talk about designing the car, working with suppliers like Bosch and so on to develop components that fit into high quality, high performance cars that are fun to drive. But then these same components that are being developed by Bosch or by Tanaka or anyone else that is put into a car, all your competitors can buy those components, maybe not right away, but in a few years down the road, right? So if you drill down further to what's left, often then it's the brand, right? So, I mean, what I'm saying is moving into a service economy really requires you to do deep soul searching on what will you own that will give you value extraction power. And I use a very simple value chain here in sort of explaining this. So where do you position yourself? So if I take a famous running shoe brand, and that brand is sold in, let's say Nike for the sake of argument. I buy Nike, I sell Nike in Manhattan. And it's manufactured, let's say, in Vietnam or in China. What's the gross margin of the retailer in Manhattan? At what price do they buy? There's a typical fashion item they probably buy at $50 or $40. So they have a $60, $50 gross margin. Now the brand, the company that manufactures or that owns the brand, does the design, quality controls the manufacturing, coordinates the supply chain, let's say in Nike's case, there's $40 left, let's say. What do they take out of a typical chain? That would be around maybe $30, right? So $30, so there's only $10 left. So how much goes into inbound, outbound logistics, so manufactured in Vietnam, consumed in Manhattan? So logistics is very low cost at the moment if you sea freight it. So maybe it's $1, $2, $3 maximum for logistics. And you can ask what goes into manufacturing, and it's very little. There's hardly anything left if you look at it. So maybe $8, right? So you can ask, why in the world is the value capturing so heavily based on the retailer and on the owner of the brand, so they capture 80% of the value. So think about it. If Nike, for example, did a value chain analysis, hired a brand new MBA, and they said, wow, 60% of the value is captured by the retailer. For the next Olympics or the next World Cup, let's design a highly exciting new range of products and use social media and endorsement and push really into marketing. And then I talk to my retailer, I say, look, these shoes will fly off your shelves. And by the way, here's your new price list, and they cut the gross margin to 58% from 60. So what's the retailer gonna do? Are they gonna swallow this margin cut even if you promise higher sales? So even if you sell one brand higher, who says this is not cannibalizing the other sales, which in other sales may be at a higher margin? So you can expect the retailer to really push back and say, hey, you know, listen, brand, I need my 60% margin. Come to my shop, what do you see? So you see 2 meters dedicated shelf space to you at the entrance with a dedicated sales promoter. So all of it costs money, and if you cut my margin, I have to cut my investment into your brand. So then maybe 2 meters shelf space becomes 1 meter shelf space, entrance becomes corner, and sales promoter becomes maybe poster, right? So who moves up front, 2 meters dedicated shelf space, promoter and so on, will be another equally good brand that gives the retailer the margin the retailer wants, right? So you can see, what does the retailer own? Two very important parts. They own, number one, the point of sale. So whether that's virtual on a website or whether that's physical in a store, they can place your brand. So they have that bargaining power. And the second, what they own is also the customer relationship. So if a customer comes to the store and says, I need a good pair of running shoes for hard surface, you're not going to recommend a brand that has a low margin, right? So you own that relationship, which gives you power. So you can ask, on the other hand, the retailer buys shoes from Nike, let's say at 40, but they could go to Sri Lanka or Vietnam and buy shoes with exactly the same air inside, maybe similar technology and design and so on, for $15. So why don't they do it? It's very simple. If you want Nike, you only can buy Nike from Nike. I mean, if you do online search, you find all sorts of funny brands in China here, for example, close to Nike, but not quite Nike, right? So Nike or Likey or all these other brands, yeah? So you can ask yourself, what is the easier sale? You buy Nike at 40 and sell Nike at 100, $60 cross margin, or you sell Nike at 15 and you sell Nike at 75, also gives you $60 gross margin, right? And you can easily see nobody is going to buy your Nike. I mean, if you're in the Nike business, you buy it at 15, you sell at 45, and you're in some night market or somewhere, but not in your high street, right? So Nike owns the brand. So what about logistics and production here? Think about it. Do you care whether your logistics are powered by DHL or FedEx or UPS? As an end user, you really don't care. So if you are a logistics provider and you want to sell to Nike, first you try and sell over performance. I'm more reliable, I have better service, I'm faster, I have you have full visibility of your goods and so on. But then if two or three or four logistics companies can provide the same, the next area you compete on after this, if performance is the same, you compete on price. And then guess what? If price is largely the same, so how do you compete? And then you end up competing over relationships, right? So if everything is the same, you buy from your friend. Same as for manufacturing. If China gets too expensive, well, you move to Vietnam, right? If you operate with a company you like, you trust, but then a competitor comes and says, look, we just started a fully automated, robotics-driven shoe manufacturing company. Come to us, we can offer you a 20% lower cost. What will you do? If your relationship is very good with the existing provider, you probably show this proposal to your existing provider and ask, can you match? Yes, and maybe they don't have to match quite. They can get the 2 or 3 or 4 or 5% price premium because they're a trusted entity, but not a lot more. So that's what I want to show you here. If you can buy any asset, any activity, any process from a competitive market, what should you own in a value chain that allows you to extract value is any one of these things, either the point of sale and or the customer relationship and or the brand. Then, of course, if there is significant R&D or technology in your service, own that. But more and more companies don't really have this cutting edge R&D, at least in services. Most things Emirates does or Singapore Airlines does, anyone else can copy. Whatever you see in a Starbucks or in a McDonald's, you can copy these things. You just can't copy the brand, right? But the other things, the processes and so on, is not a secret. So, but if there is R&D, of course, own this. And sometimes infrastructure, volume critical mass can offer you a competitive advantage, like in the Rolls-Royce example. So what I'm saying here is, given where we are going in our economy, that more and more and more and more will be outsourced, think very carefully of what to own to extract value in the future. So the key question really is, for all of you here who will listen, where do you see your company's potential sources of competitive advantage? So pick one of your segments and discuss what you think are your current and potential future value propositions. Is that value proposition unique? And if it is unique, is it defendable? Is it based on a competitive advantage or core competency competitors cannot easily or fast or do not want to copy? So I do a lot of workshops in companies where we precisely spend 2 days just answering this question, where we really look at what segments are in the market, who are the competitors, and what is their core competency, what is their targets, what are their target segments, and who are you? And this takes usually 1 to 2 days to really figure out what's unique about us. How can we move forward? How can we extract value in the future? And as I shared at the beginning, there are a few areas you can focus on. And service tends to be one of those things that can offer you a competitive edge for the reasons we discussed. Now, key takeaways. I mean, I discussed a few things here with you in this webinar. First, we discussed, so now why are services difficult to copy and are potential source of differentiation. We discussed the Rolls-Royce case study here. Then we discussed the big picture, the trend that services are increasing and why, because our economies are specializing more and more and more and outsource more and more and more, which means that we have to think a lot more carefully on what to focus on and what to own to extract value. And I closed here with a value chain where I said, well, own the customer, own the point of sale, and that usually includes service, own the brand. Then sometimes if there is a scope or a possibility for owning IP, own that. And if volume critical mass offer an advantage and you're the biggest in your industry, go for it. So with this, let me say a few more words. Ali mentioned my books, so I just feature some of them here. Some of the Essentials book is for undergraduates, the Services Marketing book is for MBAs, and for executives, I have the Winning in Service Markets, where a lot of my ideas are in it. And also, I just finished a big research project on cost-effective service excellence. So if given that service is a key differentiator, how do I deliver excellent service cost-effectively? And on my website, you can see a lot of my thinking here. And also Flying High, I did a lot of work with Singapore Airlines. You can download the whole book from my website. And with this, let me say thank you. Warmest regards here from Singapore. And Ali, I hand over to you regarding the questions.
Well, thank you very much, Professor and folks. We are now open for question and answers. So if you have any questions, you could either insert it in the question box, or you could equally raise your hand. There's a hand icon available on the console, and if you click on it, you will be able to speak directly with the professor. But let me go straight to the question box. There are a couple of them already posted, being the first one. What does it mean to create or co-create value?
I mean, value is in the eye of the beholder, and whatever you do, if the customer sees value in what you do, so if you do something, or some people, what is the job to be done for the customer? That's the value creation, yes? But my entire talk was really focused on capturing value here. And the reason is a lot of companies create a lot of value, but then it's all competed away again. So actually it is no good if you focus just on creating value and you have no mechanism to also capture that value. And so, I mean, always look at, of course, the first step is always creating value, but the second step is to ensure that that value creation, that a large part at least of this, goes to you and is not competed away again.
Okay, thank you very much. We have another one from Mr. Mahdi Shahnawaz. The question is, for a company that enjoys competitive advantage of a monopoly, how they can enhance the value of service?
You see, for monopolies always believe that customer satisfaction doesn't matter so much to them, which is right and also not right. Because if you are a poor company, if you don't deliver good service, you still have stakeholders, because if you have a poor reputation and still your costs go up, right? Energy goes up, labor goes up, and so on. So you will have to increase prices at some point. So who approves a price increase? If you have a monopoly, there's usually a regulator. So you have to convince the regulator. The regulator is governed by who? By the government. That's the government, again, reports to who? Is to the people. So you will have a lot of headwind if you're a poor company and you want to increase price and you're seen as a lousy company. So even in a monopoly situation, you are much better off being seen as an excellent company that serves stakeholders well than not. How to get there is basically be a customer-centric customer. Listen to your customers, work with your customers or with all your stakeholders, and continuously improve. The advantage you have as a monopoly is you have stability, you have certainty of demand, so you can think a lot more long-term, you can make significant investments, and you're pretty sure that they will pay off. So you're actually in a very nice spot if at the same time you're customer-centric.
All right, thank you very much. We have another one. How to enter the emerging experience economy? Hello, Professor, you there? Professor Jochen, you there?
I'm back. Yeah, I was disconnected for some reason. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Another short question: how to enter the emerging experience economy?
Oh, it's a very. I mean, the question is, what do you ask by emerging experience economy, right? I mean, are you talking B2B or B2C? B2C is a lot easier. Customers are there for an experience. But again, be careful, right? I mean, there are sort of different types of services. There is the DHL package delivery. There's the ATM withdrawal. There is a business class flight on Emirates or Singapore Airlines. And there is the banyan tree holiday. Yeah, so if you're in the banyan tree space, experience is very easy. Why? Customers come to you to buy an experience. So it's very easy for you to design. On the other hand, if you're a bank that runs ATMs or a courier service company, hey, I don't want an experience from you, right? I want a package delivered. I want cash in my wallet. So be very careful here. Here, experience means as easy to do business with as convenient as possible. So the whole experience design is convenience, speed, ease of transaction, not experience. I mean, look, if I buy a ticket online, I don't want a long conversation with anyone. I don't want to see pretty pictures. So be very, very careful you understand the needs on what you want to do. Now, the Emirates and Singapore Airlines flight is somewhere in between. On one hand, yes, you want to I want to travel from point A to point B. So, but I want the outcome. I want to get there. Let's say if long into the future you can beam me across, like, you know, in 5 minutes. So do I rather get beamed across in 5 minutes, or do I rather have a 14-hour flight from Asia to the US somewhere? Believe me, after maybe one flight, people like to experience the business class. After that, they rather get beamed. So here, the business class or first class is, given that you have to be with me for many, many hours, how do I make this a great experience for you? Yes, and here, I mean, Singapore Airlines is quite leading. They just implemented together with Accenture the customer experience management system, where cabin crew has a tablet to understand the preferences and needs of their sort of higher tier passengers in their loyalty program. So it's sort of through customer insight and training, then through delivery. So it's not overnight you enter the experience sort of economy or channel from commodity experiences to really customized, personalized experiences. You need the systems, the technology, you need the people, the training to go in it. There's a lot of discipline and a lot of development to do that.
Well, thank you very much. And we have another one, last questions. How the experience economy will grow? Is it through the gales of creative destruction?
Yeah, of course. I mean, all our development is creative destruction. We are now at an inflection point in our economies, especially. So we look back to the 18th century. We talked about the Industrial Revolution. In 200 years, people will look back now exactly at 2017 here and says, wow, this was the beginning of the service revolution. Why I'm saying this, we have an unbelievable development in technology at the moment. To give you an example, if I told you 5 years ago that we will have autonomous cars on the roads in 5 years, you would have laughed at me. And today you ask, why don't we already have many more of those cars on the road? So what we see is technology is getting better and better and smarter. At the same time, components are getting smaller and cheaper all the time. And we make unbelievable progress in robotics, in sensors, in cameras, in biometrics, in AI, in speech recognition, and so on, that a lot of services that are delivered today by people tomorrow will be delivered by systems and robotics and so on at a fraction of today's costs. So what we will see is that a lot of the routine and standard transaction will be done in a highly automated, highly cost-effective way. And so there will be a massive production or capacity of very low cost, highly standardized, highly automated services that will serve more and more and more people. And on the other hand, you will see that, yes, there will, let's say I'm in the business school here. Of course, in 20 years, there will be a lot of the learning will be online, mediated through computers and other things. So that will become very cheap, very wide reach. But at the same time, the high end of the market will become even more expensive than now. But there will still be a market for that. It just will mean that the middle tier players will be squeezed out. The low tier that goes with fully automated, they will have such cost left, but that will be. We are disconnected again. Ali, can you hear me? I thought we were disconnected for a short time.
I think we lost you just for a few seconds, but you're back now.
Okay, cool. Anyway, I finished. So I think where we're going here is really dramatic improvements in technology that will cut so many jobs and at the same time make incredible sort of improvements in productivity, and with that, a lot of prices will collapse. A lot of services will become a lot cheaper.
All right, thank you. And I'm just going to take one last supplementary question from Mr. Mahdi Jalil. The question is, well, he has also written that, Professor, I was at one of your symposiums in IRSSM 6. I'm also a follower of you on LinkedIn. I have one last question to you. Is to create an environment where the bureaucracy holds all the cards. So how can I create a service innovation?
Okay. I mean, what I've seen in a lot of countries where bureaucracy is so stifling that a lot of these services, they sideline the entire infrastructure. They just go out of the box, out of the infrastructure, and you just think about, I mean, Uber was a disruption. Many taxi markets in the world were completely closed and blocked. And here came someone who rode on a completely different infrastructure, entered the market, and completely shifted it. And it was very difficult for countries, even with stifling bureaucracy, to stop this, simply because this service was so loved by commuters that it was very unpopular to shut it down again. So it's probably better to then work outside the system than inside the system, and then maybe do something which is completely with new technologies. I mean, one of my students just started a business in the US where they use drones to do inspection of high constructions and so on. So rather than going into an established business, he just started up something completely new from scratch with a completely new technology to do something established players have been doing in a different way for a long time, and they were reluctant to adopt the new technology. Why? They have so much vested capital in the existing infrastructure. So if you can sidestep, do sidestep. And by the way, thank you so much. I'm so happy to have you, and thank you for following me on LinkedIn.
Well, that really brings us towards the end of the webinar. So any quick concluding remarks that you would like to give before we dismiss out, Professor?
Yes, Ali, thank you so much for having me. And as you can sense, I'm very excited about what the next 10, 20 years will bring on the service sector. It will be a rapid speed that we will see new services people didn't think were possible only a few years back. So I think we are in really, truly exciting times, and I look forward to that.
Indeed, sir. So thank you very much once again. I really want to thank you on behalf of the Madinah Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship for taking the time to deliver this webinar through our platform. So thank you very much once again, Professor. And
thank you.
And yeah, thank you very much. And thank you all of those who participated in this webinar. We are recording it, so please stay tuned to webinar.mile.org to learn about our upcoming programs or webinars, and equally to access the recorded versions. With that note, I would like to end and conclude. So you all have a good day, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're calling from. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.